The success of your tomatoes and eggplant ultimately goes right back to the day you sowed the seeds. So today I'm going to walk you through exactly what to do step by step to get the strongest plants that will produce loads of fruit throughout the season. Hey, I'm Brian with Next Level Gardening. If you're looking to join an online garden community that offers tips, tricks, and support to help take your garden to the next level, you're in the right place. Get started now by clicking subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss anything. Now let's get growing. Tomatoes and eggplant might seem like a weird pairing, but they are related along with potatoes and peppers. They're all parts of the nightshade family. Let me know in the comment section if you grow both and what your favorite varieties are. The seeds are sown in the same way for the same reason. The only difference is tomatoes will germinate in cooler soil than eggplants will. But we'll get to that in a bit. Both tomatoes and eggplant seeds can be started indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. They can be planted into the garden as transplants about 2 to 3 weeks after your last frost date. So before we get started with the process, I'm going to go through the varieties that I'm going to be growing this year. So in a previous video, I talked about how I was going to be growing more hybrid seeds this year rather than heirlooms. Now, I did have some people concerned that I was saying not to grow heirlooms. That's not at all what I was saying. Have a couple of heirlooms every year that you try, and then when you find some you like, then stick with those. So I will be growing Kellogg's Breakfast. I'm going to be growing Burpee's Super Steak Hybrid. I'm going to be growing Burpee's Super Sauce Hybrid. And that is another thing that I realized last year is I need to grow more for saving, for sauce type of tomatoes. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be growing a couple of small tomatoes, obviously Sun Gold because that's my favorite, sweetest tomato I've ever had, and then a 5-star grape F1 hybrid. Speaking of sweet and wonderful tomatoes, I didn't realize that you guys must have found our business address on our website because we hadn't really been checking the P.O. box very often because there was never a need to. There wasn't much ever in there. However, this past week we went after about 3 months and it was packed full of stuff from you guys. Like, thank you, first of all. But one of the things that came was some seeds from a viewer named Peter. And he said that he has driven hours to get these seeds or seedlings because they're that good. They're called Pink Princess Tomato. They are an heirloom. At 62 days to maturity, it says. That's pretty fast for a tomato. So thank you, Peter. Thank you for everyone who've sent some things. We're still going through them, but I really appreciate that. And then last year I grew an eggplant. I forget the name. I'll put it on the screen. Unfortunately, the fruits weren't as good. They had thick skin and they had a lot of seeds. So I have heard that Asian Delight, it's an F1 hybrid, has thin skin and not as many seeds. So I'm going to try that one this year. So now I'm going to first talk about what I'm going to sow the seeds in container-wise. And that is what I've always used, and that is red Solo cups. And these have been used for years. And these are probably going to last me many, many more years before I have to get rid of them. And you can use any color of Solo cup you want. It doesn't matter. I did have somebody just recently comment on an old video asking why I don't use clear cups so I could see the moisture level and I could see the roots in the cup. And that is because roots like it dark. In nature, they're in the ground. They don't get light. So then they said, I answered that to them, and then they said, well, why don't you put that inside of a Solo cup? Well, then you're just using twice the amount of plastic. So for me, I've always done it this way, and it's just always worked. So the only thing you need to do with the Solo cups is to put some drainage in them. And you can use scissors and just snip around the edge, maybe 4 places. You can use a drill to put one big hole or a few smaller holes. I had a viewer say they use a soldering iron, which I guess that would work as well. It might put off some weird gases, so maybe definitely be outside when you do that. And you can drill through several cups at once to save time. And I really love the Solo cup because they're the perfect size. I believe this is the 16 ounce. Is this the 16 ounce? They have the 8 ounce and they have like a 24 ounce, but this size is really good for in between. You could go 24 if you have to leave them in, if you're growing them in, you start them really early and have to have them last for maybe 2 months in the 2 or 3 months in the house. but otherwise the 16 ounce works great. Now, I'm not going to be able to plant my tomatoes out in the garden for probably 6 weeks or so at least, because right now I have a new tomato bed that I still have to build, and the other two are full of peas, and one still has tomatoes going from last year. And you can use whatever you want. You can use recycled containers from the garden center. The only thing you want to look for is you want a tall container, more tall than short and squatty. And the reason is because eggplants and tomatoes actually grow roots on their stem. And the sooner you can get them to develop these roots, the stronger and more vigorous the plant is going to be when you finally put it out into the garden. And a more robust plant is going to produce more fruit and going to have better ability to fight off pests and disease throughout the season. And this method works for both determinate and indeterminate varieties of tomatoes. Now, the growing medium we're going to be sowing the seeds in, I'm just using a pre-moistened seed starting mix. I will link all of the products that I talk about here are going to be linked down below. Pre-moistened is important, and it should have the feeling of a wrung out sponge. So when you squeeze it, you might get a few drops out of there, but really it's just going to be nice and crumbly. All right, so when it comes to filling the cups, we're only going to fill the cups a little less than halfway up. This is really important going forward. So we're just going to put 2 seeds in the container, and we're going to press them down a little bit and just cover them with a tiny bit of potting mix. And you just want to bury them about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. Now, the extra seed, the second seed, is just an insurance policy, so in case one doesn't germinate, you've still got a plant for each cup. Now, I've been asked about soaking the seeds overnight for better germination. I've never done that with tomatoes. I've never had a germination problem. They're fairly easy to germinate. If you want to do that, that's fine, but to me, that's just an extra step. Now, if both of the seeds germinate, you want to wait until they both have their first set of true leaves. The first 2 leaves that come out of the soil are the seed leaves, and then the second pair of leaves, which look like actual tomato leaves, those are the first true leaves. And once they've got that, choose the weakest one and snip it off at the base of the stem. Or if you're not heartless, you can go ahead and pull the entire thing out of the cup, tease them apart, and then give them their own separate cups. Also, once they have their first set of true leaves, you can begin to fertilize them. I fertilize mine every 2 weeks, half strength, with a liquid organic fertilizer. Now, I use Neptune's Harvest fish and seaweed formula, but you can use any, well-balanced organic liquid fertilizer. Neptune's Harvest can be found on the link below as well, and there's a discount that you can take advantage of. Always remember to label your seedlings because you will forget, especially if you have lots of different kinds. If you're getting something out of this video, please click the thumbs up button. It really helps the video out, pushes it out to a wider audience. If you want to share it with a gardening friend, that would be great. I would really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. So you want these to be moist. Now, I pre-moistened mine, so that's okay. If you don't think it's moist enough, give them a little water. What you don't want to do is water them inside of a tray like this and then let them sit in that water. So if you have them in a tray, you can water them, but then empty the tray out and then sit these back in. You shouldn't have to water them again until after they have germinated, because what we're going to do is, to keep the moisture in, is put a humidity dome. Now, this came with the tray, so it's all in one, but just put that on there. It's not going to fit perfectly because these cups are a little tall, but it's going to keep enough of the moisture in, and you can check it every few days and just make sure. But these should germinate in 7 to 10 days. And once they've germinated, you're going to remove the humidity dome. It does not go back on. Now, if you really want to supercharge germination, like almost cut the time in half, then you can get a seed heat mat. And that just keeps the ambient temperature below the tray at about 70 or so degrees. The heat mat at this time of year for tomatoes is probably not a necessity, but with eggplant, it definitely is. Eggplants need more heat to germinate than tomatoes do. But it does speed things up for tomatoes as well. I think last year, mine germinated in 4 days. Same rule as with the humidity dome. Once you have germination, you take off the humidity dome and you turn off the bottom heat. You're done with it. Now, if you have any more questions about seed starting in general, I will link some videos I did down in the description. including a video about grow lights for every budget. A lot of people ask if you can get these started in a sunny window. Probably not. If your window receives 6 hours minimum of direct sunlight, not just bright light, it needs direct sun 6 hours a day, then maybe. If you have a greenhouse in the sun, that's fine, but you still want the potting mix to be warm, so you might still need a heat mat underneath it. All right, now we're gonna jump ahead. Put this aside. We're fast forwarding time now to when your plants are growing and they've reached the top of the cup. And this is where we're gonna turn a regular tomato or eggplant seedling into a supercharged seedling. Now, I've never done this with eggplant before, so this will be my first time doing that. I will report back with the results. They have the same type of stems as a tomato because they're related. And so, like I mentioned earlier, they grow roots anywhere their stem touches the soil. Now, this is an optional step, but you can remove the leaves that are below the rim of the cup. You don't have to do it. Like I said, it's totally optional. Some people think that that might cause a little bit of rotting. I've never had that happen by not removing the leaves. And then all we're gonna do is we're gonna take some more pre-moistened potting soil. We're gonna fill the rest of that cup right around the stem. And just pack it down a little bit, not too hard. Just leave maybe 1/4 of an inch at the top of space to water. Now, all along that stem we just buried, more roots are gonna develop. They're called adventitious roots, so in a couple more weeks, when we're ready to plant this into the garden, this entire cup from the top down to the bottom is gonna be full of roots that come off that main stem. It's gonna create a super strong, robust plant that's ready to go out into the garden. Now, when these are ready to go out in the garden, I'm gonna have another video because at that time, there's a whole other thing you can do to make some more magic happen. Again, if you learned something, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, share it with a gardening friend, and I'll see you next time.